Hello, welcome to Talks at Google. I'm Rob Leeworthy, and I'm very pleased to welcome today Zach Weinersmith, who is the creator of Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal. Give me a cheer if we know Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal. Good. Oh, thank God for that. Author, entrepreneur, internet celebrity. We're going with that. Going with that. And producer of BAHFest, which is over for this weekend, and we will talk about in a little bit. So first of all, Zach, thanks for coming in.
Yeah.
Perhaps you could tell us about what you think Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal is and how it came about. Because I wrote down here, it started in the heady days of 2002. 2002. It's a long time ago in internet years.
Yeah, it's a comics. It's the fourth best comic strip.
As voted for by whom?
In my head.
Oh, okay, right.
Yeah, it's like XKCD, The Oatmeal, Penny Arcade, and then
you.
Yeah,
okay.
It's about science and philosophy and economics and everything.
Okay. And how did it morph over the years? Did you? Because you have a literature background. And then you went back to uni to study physics.
Yeah.
I'm taking this from Wikipedia, so I need to kind of double check those facts. Okay.
Yeah, you can use me as a citation.
Yeah, I will. A citation.
Yeah, that's all accurate information from Wikipedia.
Okay, so what took you back to study physics later? Because
I was working in Hollywood in the film business for the studio that released Sharknado, actually.
Okay.
It was 10 years before Sharknado. Yeah, that can go on Wikipedia too. Okay. But I was just working in film, and it was awful and terrible because everyone in Hollywood should die.
Okay.
And most of them, not all of them. I hated it, and I wanted to get out, and then so I got to where my comics were doing well enough that I could quit my job, and I did, and then I found it was really difficult to write ideas because I was kind of happy, you know, and you know, like I was like 23 and had savings. It was weird, and so This is a short version of it, but I decided to go back to university just to kind of get some stress into my life.
That's good. Nothing like deadline to really make the creative juices flow.
It's true. It's true.
And on that, you do. So SMBC has one comic a day, which I think is. I didn't realize that until that's an incredibly high turnover. How do you find the time or the ideas? You know, sort of. Why set yourself the one a day target, perhaps rather than 3 a week? Say.
I originally did it because that's what they used to do in the old comics business. It was one a day, so I was just emulating. But strategically, I just try to read a lot. You know, if you read old books, you can steal, you know, all you want. Yeah. Because they're dead.
Yeah.
But no, I do try to read, you know, 3 or 4 or 5 books a week and hard stuff.
So you come up with all your ideas, and then you kind of, I guess the deadline forces you to put something out there every day rather than overthink it. And I think a lot of us sometimes without those deadlines that suffers and the deadlines slip.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when you put all those ideas up on SMBC, do you track what works, what doesn't work? Do you tweak the future comics based on likes?
Kinda. I actually, my wife is a scientist, and at some point when we have more time, we want to do this thing where we try to analyze, see if we can predict which jokes are successful, which is probably a bad idea.
But almost a 20% project.
Yeah.
Right here.
But because actually I did this sort of experiment on myself once, because I thought I could predict which jokes would be successful. Successful meaning like retweets or Facebook likes or something. Or Google Plus, I mean.
Sure. Yeah. we all use that an awful lot. Absolutely.
I'm glad this is being recorded. But yeah, so I kept a sort of diary, which I would do a comic, and then I would write down, whether I thought it would be popular or not. Like not whether it was good, just whether I thought it would be popular. And it turned out I had just no predictive power at all. I thought I would at least kind of know what I was. I would say this won't do well, and it did fine. And so I apparently have no predictive ability for my own work.
Okay. Well, that's good, and I guess it keeps it fresh and original.
Right. Yeah. So I don't try to anticipate what people want, because apparently I can't. Okay. So
I think what I noticed on your website was that you have advertising, you've got digital display advertising. Mm-hmm. You've got Patreon, so if people pay. If you don't know what Patreon is, well, you can explain that.
Yeah.
And you have Kickstarter as well, and then you sell books in bookshops. So I wanted to kind of those revenue streams, which works, which doesn't. You're very much experimenting with those.
Yeah, my sort of philosophy is it's good to have a diverse set of revenue streams, because if one suddenly dies on you, you'll be okay. So ad revenue is a great source of revenue, except that there's a tendency when you serve as many ads as we do for the bad stuff to leak through. We've occasionally had malware or, like buy Russian brides stuff, which we don't feel too good about, or like vote Donald Trump, which we feel even worse about. Yeah. But it's a consistent source of revenue.
Okay.
So, but actually the downside to ads is they're highly seasonal. There's a lot of variation, so you can't sort of predict your revenue stream, which is bad for running a business. Whereas Patreon, which for those who don't know, is essentially like a subscription service where you agree to pay X dollars, like $1 a month, to an artist, say, and in exchange you get some token thing, like you get to see, like in my case, you get to see a comic early, or you get to see my reading list or something, little stuff. But it means a lot to the company because a consistent revenue source means we can be sure we can employ somebody and not have to worry about, making enough return on investment immediately. Yeah.
And I've just turned my mic off, so if you can't hear me at the back, wave. So Kickstarter as well. You've had 5 or 6 projects on Kickstarter, and how have you seen that grow and morph over the years? And do you have the same people coming back to you and that?
Yeah, Kickstarter has become a huge part of book revenue, and it's sort of almost like it's weird because we used to launch books and then we switched to launching them on Kickstarter, and it almost increased sales in the opening month like an order of magnitude, which is bizarre because it's the same product. So humans, I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it does allow some stuff. Like it's a nice piece of software in that we can sort of promise to modify the book a little bit for people. We can also service people who want to spend at different levels more effectively, but that doesn't explain the order of magnitude. There's some weird Kickstarter magic juju. I don't know what it is, but
okay. And your latest one is Augie. I'm going to read it here. Augie and the Green Knights. Augie and the Green Knights.
We just wrapped up a new one. It's a book called "Religion Ruining Everything Since 4004 BC."
Okay.
Yeah.
And so with Augie and the Green Knights, it's your first children's book.
Yes. Yeah.
So what was the spark to writing a children's book, to sort of stepping away from adult comics?
I wanted to do it for a while. We were also about to have our first child, but part of it was I have this really guilty pleasure for old Victorian adventure novels like Henry Rider Haggard and Arthur Conan Doyle and others, but they're all really racist.
Okay.
Olden times. And sexist and everything. So I was like, can I give these to my kid or something? So I kind of wanted to write a book that had that sort of tone to it, but that was not racist.
And Augie is a young girl who's science-loving, very nerdy. Yeah. This is a gift for your daughter, I imagine.
In a way, yeah. It's something, So it's kind of has anyone read? There's an old medieval romance called Sir Gawain and the Green Knight. Maybe a few of you have read it.
A few nods.
Yeah, and Tolkien did a version of it. So this book is about a little girl who. You kind of get an explanation for the weird events in the actual story via her exploits, sort of manipulating things. So
great.
Yeah.
Very good. And it was fun to write, and you got an illustrator on board. So I guess that's the first time you didn't illustrate your own comics?
Yeah, it was great. Okay. I got, maybe some of you know, there's a great French cartoonist named Boulet, and he agreed to do a series of watercolors as illustrations, so that was actually amazing. I didn't think we'd get him, but he was excited to do it. So.
Well, it's a beautiful book. So
it is. We cost ourselves a lot of profit making the book look nice. So
very good.
Yeah.
And this weekend you are over here doing BAHFest at Imperial College. Tell us about BAHFest, how that's been running the stage for a few years.
Yeah, BAHFest, it's the Festival of Bad Ad Hoc Hypotheses, which is as nerdy as it sounds. And the basic idea is we started it at MIT in 2013, and it's like the original show was you come up with a theory of evolution that's clearly wrong, but you substantiate it very well. So my keynote talk I gave the first year was about how babies evolved to be catapulted. And I have a lot of good evidence, actually. It explains why babies are hairless, but adults aren't. And like babies are more like cartilagey, so they kind of bounce.
Yeah.
And I even I talked to an aviation guy who had this theory that babies have different load balancing than adults do, which keeps them stable while they're...
No, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So. have other lines of argument, but yeah. So
I wish your daughter well.
Yeah. She's past the catapulting stage.
Yeah.
So we're doing an evolution show at Imperial tonight. It's too late to buy tickets, so I don't know why I'm telling you about it.
But it's not too late for tomorrow's show, I believe.
Yeah. So we do another one that's the theme is big science, meaning like you propose a mega project. So my example, which I haven't done this talk yet, is I call it the relativistic refrigerator, and it takes food close to the speed of light so that it stays fresh.
Yeah.
And I haven't actually calculated what it would cost to get a pie, say, to see, but I think it'd be worth it.
Very good.
Yeah.
And so you've done it a couple of times in the States? And
Yeah. We do a show in MIT, another in San Francisco, and another in Seattle. Yeah.
Great, very good.
Yeah.
Well, I hope that goes well. We're going to open the floor to questions. If you have a question, you want to put your hand up? One over there.
This might be just a mistake.
Oh.
A lot of the stuff I find in your cartoons reminds me of the kind of thing that Eliezer Yudkowsky would used to write about. And I wondered if like he or like Scott Alexander or anyone from that crowd was an influence.
I don't know if I'd count him as an influence, but I know Eliezer. He's crazy. I love him. I've read a lot of his stuff, and I sort of stumbled upon his work, and then I really enjoyed it. And but I only met him in the last year or two, I guess. So I don't think I'd call him an influence, but he's been funny. Actually, the kids' book, he was one of the early reviews we got. He really liked it because it's kind of in his wheelhouse, because it's like a little girl who's like super rational about everything, kind of in a fantasy world, like telling it it's wrong about everything.
Who are your other influences, if any?
Who
inspired you to start doing comics when you were young?
There's a cartoonist named Glenn Baxter, who's probably nobody is. I see one person nodding. Yeah, he's sort of a surreal single panel cartoonist, and he was the main one. I don't really know. I don't read a lot of comics.
Okay.
I'm not into them.
No.
Yeah.
Were you drawing from a very young age?
Yeah.
Okay.
But yeah.
Very good. Questions? Yeah.
One of the things I really love about SMBC is the range of ethnicities and relationships that are portrayed. And I wondered, do you have a program that's like a random number generator telling you who you should put in some situation where it doesn't matter, or is it just sort of whatever the muse takes you, or how does that work?
Every engineer asks me that. Do I have a random number generator for ethnicity? It's funny to me that that's like the obvious guess, I guess, that I programmed it. But no, I just at the point of coloring it, I throw in slight variations from this. I do overrepresent gingers. Perhaps you've noticed. But no, I don't have a program. Yeah.
Just shout out.
Okay. My favorite SMBC comic is the one where you talk about having various lifetimes. Maybe 7 years to master something. I'm wondering if you follow that advice yourself, and if you do, what are the things you feel you mastered or become great at?
I would like to be able to follow it more. I kind of stole that idea, speaking of stealing from the dead. Robert Hamming, the computer scientist, wrote about a similar thing about how he thought something like engineers should switch field every so often, like 7 or 10 years. I forget what he actually said, but I really like that idea, sort of a general principle of sort of changing what you do. As a pragmatic matter, it's a little trickier because like I can't stop doing comics because I have a family and they like food, but I do kind of switch what I'm doing. Like part of why I did a kids book was kind of that motivation to do something different. And I'm working on a different book now that I can't say too much about yet. But actually the thing for me now that I'm trying to switch into doing well is writing prose books instead of comic stuff. I'm still very much interested in comics, and it's also my livelihood. But I'm trying to get into that next. I also have sort of a previous lifetime trying to get a physics degree, but I had to drop out for comics, and I'd like to get back to that at some point, but right now
How many years of your degree, the second degree, did you do?
I did, I think 4 semesters.
Okay,
So I got just where I was about to get to the good stuff, and then I left. So
very good.
But yeah.
And would you ever go back to? I mean, you said Hollywood at the top and screenplay writing. Is that still something, or do you think books and that medium is what? inspires you now?
I like books. I don't really. I'm not opposed to the film as a medium or anything. But the thing is, film is extremely collaborative. You can't just like go off by yourself and make a movie. Yeah. And I am kind of an antisocial.
A lone wolf,
jerk.
if you will.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, that's what I meant. Yeah, lone wolf. Yeah, so I'm really more into comics and book writing.
Okay.
Yeah.
Very good. Yes, sir.
Do you tend to plan your comics a long time in advance, or do you wake up in the morning and try to?
How does inspiration strike?
Yes, well, in theory they are planned in advance. I think I'll have to draw one the night I get home, actually. But yeah, it's gotten a little trickier since we had a daughter for me to get ahead on anything. But I do write every day, and I usually have a backlog of a few drawn, and I try to have at least 2 weeks. But right now I'm getting pretty down to a minimum between these shows, and we did a bunch of shows last winter, so it's gotten a little tough. But yeah.
What's your favorite comic? I guess you asked that a bit, but is there one that sticks out as you being particularly proud of?
Oh man, no, I hate them all.
Okay.
I'm trying to think. I did one I liked. It was a single panel where there's a kid in the back of a car and he says, "Mom, Dad, I have ennui." So they have to pull over so he can make peace with the universe.
Yeah.
That's good. And, I thought that was cute.
Very good. Yes.
So I started reading SMBC since I was in high school, and a friend of mine did as well. And about a year into it, my friend said, "Dude, do you know that if you click the red button?" And so, what's the deal with the red button?
The red button. Well, so I used to. For those who don't know, there's a little red button with a bonus panel on each comic. So I used to. There used to be these like websites back in the early days of the internet where you could like vote for your favorite comic. And so I used to, as an inducement, provide a bonus panel, and then those websites kind of went away. But people really liked the bonus panel, so I kept doing it. And what's nice is that people go through and they read the comics, and then they discover the bonus panel later, and then they have to read them again. Okay. And that's good for ad revenue. So
it's very smart. Yeah. Did anyone not know about the red button here?
Good.
Okay, that's very good. The video, most of the audience put their hands up. So, any more questions? Yeah.
A lot of your comic strips basically focuses on couples or people being in relationship.
Mm-hmm.
How many, as in percentage, do you think are inspired by your own experiences? And what's your wife's reaction to those comics that you write about relationships?
I would say almost none are actually inspired by my real life. I hate to disappoint, but on the other hand, it would be awful if that were true. So, what was the second question?
What does your wife think about those?
Oh, yeah. What does she think?
Does she wish she were in more then?
Oh yeah.
Does she kind of go, "Oh, this would be funny. You should put this in a."
She actually, I've used her research twice,
okay.
But no, not too much. She does read all my comics before I decide what I'm going to draw, but that's about it. Yeah, actually, relatedly though, one of the funny things is I used to do. You may have noticed, I used to do more comics where the parents were borderline abusive, and since we had a kid, she doesn't find them as funny. I still do, but I think I probably do fewer just because she's like, "This is awful. I can't read this."
Do you ever feel with SMBC you've sort of created a box which you have to stay within, or do you think you could push it in one direction or another?
Yeah, I feel very fortunate, both because it's the internet age of comics, so I can change format, which I obviously do a lot. But what's nice about my format in particular is it is completely open-ended. So I mean, the only, I suppose, restriction is it has to be a comic, and I've even violated that a few times. But so no, I do. I think if I had kept like only doing single-panel comics or something, it would eventually have gotten restrictive. But as it is now, it's yeah.
Okay, very good. Yes.
One of the comic formats that I really appreciate from you is these ones where you have these fantastical situations and you iterate until the level of absurd. I'm sure you know the ones I mean. Where do you get your muse for those?
I actually have one of those going up maybe Sunday. I'm not sure, but I don't know. I started doing them just because they were fun, but I think I've started doing more since I got kind of into reading economics, because a lot of economics literature is about like if you tweak one little thing, humans will just ruin it. Like they called them perverse incentives. You create a bad structure and then everything goes to hell. And so actually reading economics has been very good for discovering ways in which you can accidentally ruin the world. So that's been a big thing for me lately. I think I've started doing more since I got into that literature. There's one back there. Yes.
Your work doesn't seem to have any recurring characters. There's no obvious recurring characters. Is that a deliberate choice? Have you ever been tempted to introduce sort of
recurring
people who recur over and over?
So I guess one didn't hear, your work doesn't have recurring characters in it. Do you feel, is that something you've chosen to do?
I guess I don't think about it too much. I know part of what's nice about it is every day is different. I know with some people I know who do story comics, one of the downsides is you're halfway through a story and you decide you hate it, and you're like, well, I got to do this for 2 more months. But I've occasionally been tempted, and I don't have recurring characters, but I have lots of sort of recurring themes and stuff, and so it's in my head it's kind of the same people, but no, that's part of why though I got into writing a kids book, is it was a chance to do something a little more narrative. But I don't know, maybe one of these days I'll do like a story on the comic page, but I haven't had the temptation yet.
How do you determine whether a particular comic strip is actually not that complicated and easier to understand for a lot of people?
Yeah, that's
so what's the level of nerdiness, I suppose, that you set in your comics?
My sort of rule of thumb is only one Wikipedia lookup per per comic. I don't know. I mean, I used to worry about that, but everyone has access to all of the information in the universe. So I mean, you don't want to overdo it because eventually people will just get confused. And there's some stuff like I'd like to do more literary references, but most people I don't think would go there with me. Whereas the science stuff is a little easier because it's more generalized. But if people don't know a literary reference, I keep trying to do Hemingway jokes and no one appreciates them. It's terrible.
With that, do you think? So I might say that with Patreon and sort of the people are paying you for the comics regardless of where you go. Could you push it in a more literary direction, for example, and have people come with you on that? Or do you feel bound by the science nerdy?
No, it's not that. It's just I mean, it's still kind of the same game, because you still have to, have your audience come with you, and also Patreon is not our main revenue source.
Okay.
So. I have a friend named Dave Kellett. He does a comic called Sheldon, and he does books that are on themes. And he did a literature-themed book, and he was like, I couldn't sell the damn thing. But then he did a book about pugs.
Okay.
And he said it sold like cocaine.
Yeah.
It was just,
I would buy that book.
Yeah. I think he's got Pugs 2 out now.
Okay.
But literature is still gathering dust in his closet.
Okay.
So,
very good. Yes.
In your comics, you often predict you will receive angry emails when you say things
Yeah.
or things like that. But first, why don't you reply to them? I sent some, I never got to reply. And secondly, how many do you receive on average?
I actually don't get that many angry emails. It kind of sucks. I kind of wish. I've gotten little stuff. I got a guy who said he wanted to break my hands. That was cool. But no, I don't get too many. I get maybe once a month. I get someone who's a little bit. I think it helps to have a nerdy audience because I get more like you were wrong stuff than you're a bastard stuff. So yeah, I had that. I think it was like one of the first times I went to MIT, and I had 6 freshmen around me telling me I didn't understand quantum mechanics. I don't remember what I had done, but I guess I was wrong.
Yeah.
But not too much hate mail. Yeah, I kind of wish I got more. It feels really good now and then to be mad at somebody for being wrong. But,
do you think if you did more religion, you'd get more hate mail? Is that the stuff?
I do a pretty good amount.
It's going on YouTube, so if you want comments, we can get you comments.
I mean, I just released a whole book of religion jokes, and I haven't gotten much. I did a rewritten Bible, the whole thing. I rewrote it. It's better.
Okay, it's bigger.
Yeah. It was too long for.
Much like the actual Bible is too long. So,
yeah. Mine is I think under 1,000 words.
Okay.
But no, I don't. I try. I feel like I'm a very hateful person.
Okay.
And
something to shoot for in 2016. More trolling. Okay. Good. Yeah.
It's sort of a small thing, I guess, but how far ahead are you in writing comics? I can't imagine you're like gonna go home tonight, as you said, and write tomorrow.
No, but I'm pretty close. Yeah, even I think I have like 2 scripts for when I get home. Yeah, I do try to be more ahead. But the problem becomes, you on a given day you want to select your best script. So if you work ahead, you're selecting from a smaller set than if you had waited. So there's this kind of tension between waiting, until you've written more the next day and not doing so. So it's almost bad if you work too much ahead, because then you're, like I said, picking from a smaller set of options. So.
Do you start with a kind of a single joke or a pun or play on words, or kind of an idea that you want to start writing about in the way that people write jokes, but just writing 100 ideas down and one of them will be good?
Yeah, so I do keep a sort of sheet of ideas, of sort of just random thoughts, but I try to every day write at least 3 potential comics, and on a good day, I try to write 6, but I don't always have time. And then I winnow it way down. I think maybe 1 in 6 get selected, maybe.
Okay. And if somebody here wanted to start writing webcomics, I mean, the obvious advice is just do it and get it online. But kind of beyond that, any thoughts, or has it got more competitive over the last few years?
Yeah, the level of talent these days is much higher than it was when I started. So there's a sort of joke when people ask, what to do when you get started, and the answer is you should start in 1998. Is what you should do. But yeah, in terms of getting started, it's just get started. There is with comics, it's kind of difficult because it's a lot of work. You have to write and you have to draw, and most people can't do either, at least at the outset. But the other thing is, I've noticed most people can do okay for maybe 6 weeks, because you're sort of going through every joke you ever written, every thought you ever had, and you're putting it in a comic, and then it gets really hard, and then you have to figure out what you're doing. I actually quit a number of times before I got to where I was able to keep doing it, and it was kind of just learning about how to, use your brain well, I guess. For me, I do a lot of reading. Other people, I don't know, travel a lot. You have to do something though too.
And as we said earlier, those self-enforced deadlines really force you to make something.
Yeah, it's very well, especially because if you cartoon for a living, you're completely freelance, so you could just Google Plus all day.
Good. Couple more questions, if any. Yes, I'll take this one and then this one.
Hey, so Matthew Inman of the Hotel had a lot of trouble with lawsuits and people stealing his work and things like that. Is that something you've ever faced yourself?
Yeah, I mean, my stuff gets stolen a lot, and it gets a 9gag watermark on it, and there's not much I can do about it. We haven't really pushed it. I mean, I'm sure I could send a cease and desist or something, but the problem is it's all decentralized. So it's like I say 9gag took my content, but actually some random internet person took my content, and so there's kind of nothing you can do. I wish they wouldn't save them as JPEGs, though. That's the part that really hurts. No, and I actually think that it's becoming less relevant. So as long as people know where to find your stuff, I think you're fine. The way people consume content has changed. It used to be like you'd go to my website, and now you go to Reddit and you go to social media, you go to aggregators. Most people don't go to major websites as much. Or at least that's how, I'm sure that's how my habits have changed. It's mostly like Reddit, and I go to a few sites in particular. So the point being, the common wisdom used to be to get people to go to your main website so you can do ad revenue and sell the merchandise. And now I think it's becoming more like you need people to just know that you exist, and then they'll say buy premium content or become Patreon subscribers or that sort of thing. So I worry less, because now I think as long as when 9gag steals my content, somewhere on it my URL is present, then I'm probably actually getting a reasonably good deal out of it. Not that I'd encourage people to repost my content.
Do you have a Facebook presence? Because I'm aware with YouTube there's a problem with people reposting videos on Facebook from YouTube and it not being.
Yeah, I've heard about that. We do have a Facebook page, and it's actually quite good for business. I'm sure my stuff gets reposted all the time, but that's why I resisted it for a long time, but now I put the URL at the bottom for that reason. I think things have just sort of changed, and you have to do it.
Okay.
Yeah, I was asking about how you produce your comics. Do you start sketching in pencil? Do you go digital? What do you do?
I used to do pencil and ink, and then I would scan, but I finally switched to digital, I think in 2013. It's just, I think it saves at least 50% time on the process. And I was getting like hand issues, like hand cramps from having to hand font everything twice, because I had to pencil it in and then ink it. So yeah, I switched to digital, not without misgivings, because there is something nice about ink and paper. There's no latency with reality, But I think pretty much everyone's digital now. It's getting to the point where paper is kind of like charming way to do comics. It's like the old-fashioned way. So, yeah. And I use a Cintiq tablet and a Manga Studio is the software I use.
How do you feel about SMBC.com?
What are they now? Like Sheffield muscle building company? I don't know. SMBC.com. I think it's actually just a squatter site. It's not there is no real Sheffield muscle building company or whatever it was. I actually looked into what it would cost me to buy it like a few years ago because it's a 4-letter URL which you can't get them anymore. And I think I felt like an idiot because I was like I'm willing to pay hundreds for this. And they were like, we will not sell this for under $25,000. So I was like, there will never be a time in my life when I'm willing to pay that much money for URL.
Was it available when you started, or did you?
It might have been. I don't know. Well, no, it must have not been because I would have tried to get it. I think. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You talked about your monetization a little bit, but you clearly have mixed feelings about ads. Do you use an ad blocker, and how do you respond to people who do?
I don't use ad blocker, but I don't have a problem with people using it. It's kind of, it's a problem. It's not a problem unless like everybody starts using them. So it's kind of okay if there are some people using it. And I actually, I kind of figure it depends on people's behavior because an individual's contribution to my revenue via ads is almost nothing, right? It's like pennies. But you make your money because so many people come. So what we try to do is say if you do use ad blocker, that's totally fine, but we encourage you to say go to Patreon or buy a thing or something. Like I was at a convention once and a guy ran up to me, gave me a $5 bill and said I use ad blocker, and then left. And that was like my ideal reader experience. That was awesome. But no, again, my usual view is it's like you can't sort of change the way consumers behave. At least not I can't. Maybe Google can. I don't know, you can subtly manipulate them or something. But I can't change the way consumers behave. So I try to just figure out what they want and deliver it. But I think there's a question over here.
As a kid, were you ever forced to write or draw with your right hand?
No, I always was. I discovered it's called mixed-handed. I'm not ambidextrous. I just use a random hand for each activity. I like play ping pong with my right hand, but I draw with my left. So, but yeah, I was never forced. Yeah, that'd be awful.
Okay. Yeah.
Which operating system do you use?
Chrome OS. I actually do use a Chromebook for most of my stuff.
They're very good, I hear. So yeah.
Yeah, they're wonderful. But there's no caps lock.
Is there not?
Yeah, you can configure it.
Yeah, but other than that, it's great. Yeah, I actually do use a Chromebook for most of my stuff, but I just use like a Windows 10 for my home.
Fine. There's just a sense of shame with that. That's fine.
It's not the shame. It's the degradation.
Yes.
Having written a children's book now, is it different? Or how is it different to writing a book for nerds, say?
Well, it is a children's book for nerds. There's actually, do any of y'all know like cake cutting problems in number theory? So there's this sort of class of problems of, it's called cake cutting because you know how like your mom would say one person gets to cut and one person gets to choose. So that's a solution for a one-cut cake problem. But it's like, well, how do you solve a three-cut? And there are different ways to go about this, and there are different shapes. And then like, what if it's not homogeneous? So I actually have a joke about that in the kids' book, which is there's the Solomon solution for if two women claim the same kid. What's the solution? So Solomon's solution is to say let's divide the baby, and that will prove out the real mother. So I talked to a number of theorists who thought, as he put it, that solution was a bit dicey, because it doesn't free the false mother of her desire to lie about it. Like in real life, she wouldn't be like, yeah, that's fine. I mean, like, because that's what happens in the story. She's just like, yeah, that's fine. It's not really my kid, so go ahead and chop a child in half. You know, you don't think about it, but it's not a great solution. But anyway, so I have this part where the kid in the book has to solve the Solomon problem for three mothers, Like there's 3 moms who are trying to claim 1 baby, you know, because you can't say cut in half, because what if one of them gets, you know, 60%? They might go for that. The best part, actually, I originally had a joke about how I had wanted to include an appendix in the book explaining the solution to the problem, because there is a good solution. Would y'all be interested in that? I could tell you this. So I'm totally blanking on the name of the guy who came up with this. He's a famous game theory guy, and I just can't remember his name. But his solution was that you say whoever claims the baby gets it, but if there's more than one claimant, everyone, the baby goes to like an expensive orphanage, and everyone has to pay for it. So now you see the false mother doesn't want to falsely claim because she'll get stuck with the bill for her non-kid, and so. Right? That's pretty, yeah. But the really cute part is I was talking to him and I was like, well, how would it work for, so that's a 2 claimant solution, but how would it work for 3? And it turns out it's actually expandable because, you know, if there are 3 claimants, it's just, you just have 3 people paying for the orphanage, so the kid would get a really good experience. But then I came up with what I think is an original contribution to mathematics, which is, what is the solution as mothers go to infinity? Because at some point you can't spend more on the orphanage, you know, and if you get infinity moms, it goes to $0 per mom, in which case the problem of a false mother claiming the mom rears its head again. I forget what my solution was. I mean, you could solve it by having an infinitely expanding orphanage. You could just, until it gets to the size of the universe or something, I guess. But hopefully it won't come up. But anyway, so point being, it is a book for nerds. There is a little appendix section discussing the infinite moms problem.
Brilliant. We'll leave it there and say thank you very much, Zach.
Yeah, thanks for having me.